On today's show, a sight and sound of spring in Minnesota, yet a song that might be about gone. We take a walk in the park at one of Minnesota's most historic sites. And hot coffee warms the cackles as these anglers get out of bed early to clean up their favorite fishing holes.
Minnesota Bound, presented by Connecticut Water Treatment Systems.
Hi everybody, Bill and I welcome you to Minnesota Bound.
You know, right now there are plenty of signs of spring in Minnesota, including the sound of many songbirds.
Ron Schara went in search of a disappearing songbird whose population has decreased by 90% in Minnesota.
Long ago, on Minnesota's country roads, a spring song often heard, tweeted along our roadsides in farm country, was the melodious voice of the western meadowlark. President Teddy Roosevelt once said, "The meadowlark was among the most attractive singers to which I have ever listened." Today, however, it's a song rarely heard in Minnesota. Why the silence? The answer, simple. Meadowlarks are disappearing. Over the last 50 years, meadowlark populations in Minnesota have declined more than 90%. There's a reason, of course.
We plowed up the prairies, we converted it to corn and soybeans.
When the grasslands, habitat for meadowlarks, slowly went under the plow, well, the birds' population declined as well.
We know, the science has told us, grassland birds have declined more than any other group of birds in North America. And meadowlarks, especially in kind of the eastern grasslands, have probably declined more than most other grassland birds.
Are they all gone now? To find out, we went on a hunt for meadowlarks with a volunteer guide, Scott Gloop, from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
There's several. They're out here. Well, we're currently in western Minnesota, north of the Big Stone Refuge area. We're just east of Ortonville. And we're in an area here where there's still a significant amount of grassland left. It's a good place to find western meadowlarks if you're looking for them in Minnesota.
Find the grasslands and, sure enough, here and there, you'll find a western meadowlark.
I don't know if you can hear it, but we have one putting on a show for us right now, calling just to the left of me. I see a dead branch sticking up out there and there's a bird on it, so I'm wondering if there's a western. Yep, I just heard it again.
While the sight and sounds of a meadowlark are a day brightener, our guide knows the rest of the story.
In the state of Minnesota, there's been breeding bird surveys being conducted for a little over 60 years. And if you look at the statistics from those surveys that have been conducted, there has been a 98% decline in western meadowlarks in the state of Minnesota in the last 50 years. That's a very sad statistic.
But the story doesn't end there. Other Minnesota grassland birds, such as bobolinks, also are in serious decline.
It's really a treat to have all these bobolinks here. They're another kind of iconic grassland species. They rely on grassland for breeding habitat. Obviously, they like this area very much, as we have a lot of male bobolinks flying around us right now calling. So we were successful. We found western meadowlarks.
On a piece of prairie this day, a springtime reminder of sights and sounds we used to see and hear.
The wind's gonna start picking up. I just heard another western. As I mentioned earlier, People my age and older quite commonly ask me, where did the meadowlark go? I don't hear that from the younger generations. And that's because they haven't experienced it. They don't know. They don't have that memory. That's very sad, because how can you care about something that you don't know about? That's a question that we get a lot, is who cares, or why should I care? Well, the meadowlark is in kind of a, again, it's like the canary in the coal mine.
Today our coal mine looks rather bleak, a black landscape mile after mile. You can argue we grow our food here, but you can also wonder if we plowed too much. But there is hope out there as we slowly learn to protect, preserve, and increase our grassland acres. But in the meantime, we kept plowing. We plowed until the song of the meadowlark in Minnesota is seldom heard anymore, blowing in the wind.
Minnesota Bound is brought to you by Kinetico Water Treatment Systems, Coors Light, Ice Castle Fish House and RV, and by White Bear Lake Superstore.
Up next, it's time to take a walk in the park. This time, the location is right off the runways at Minneapolis International Airport.
Fort Snelling State Park is a little over 3,000 acres, and we see about a million visitors every year here at Fort Snelling.
There are so many different experiences and stories and histories intertwined here. So historic Fort Snelling is Minnesota's first National Historic Landmark, and that just tells you how much history there is here at Fort Snelling. You really can't tell the history of the United States without talking about Fort Snelling. It's that important. One of the things that we do here in the Plank Museum and Visitor Center is this building really tells its own history. And it was built in 1905 as a cavalry barracks. And what we're seeing here, if you look on the floor, there's a concrete slab. You can see that concrete slab in this historic image. So we are standing in the same place as these guys who were cooking right here in the early 1900s. So this is our 1805 treaty installation that signifies the first formal interaction between the U.S. government and the sovereign Dakota Nation. And that treaty, signed in 1805, really made the historic fort possible. The historic fort opened in 1820. The revitalized prairie plantings here at historic Fort Snelling allow us to walk through a landscape that existed here for thousands of years. Here at the confluence of the Minnesota and Mississippi rivers, you can learn about each species and its connections to Dakota people. We are standing on the original historic round tower in the historic fort. It's a great place, and you can come back in time. And as you look around the views here, you know, we can see the High Bridge, we can see Highway 5 and modern life happening all around. But inside the walls of the fort, you can really experience history as it was.
We are in the Scott's family quarters. This is where the enslaved family of Dred and Harriet Scott and their two girls, while they were here, would have lived. I find the Scotts immensely interesting because without their landmark court decision in the Scott versus Sanford's case, where the court basically decided that no, they were not worthy, I guess, of their freedom, we wouldn't really have the civil rights that we know today.
Hundreds of thousands of people passed through Fort Snelling over 10,000 years. And you can't tell just one of those stories. The story is all of them together. And this is an incredibly sad place. It's also an incredibly heroic place.
Fort Snelling has tons of recreational opportunities, from hiking, biking, canoeing, kayaking, bird watching, dog walking, and then in the winter months we host cross-country skiing and snowshoe trails. Welcome to Snelling Lake. At this location, it is fed by many streams throughout the lake and also by the Minnesota River. At this location, you can also do lots of fishing for northern pike, bass, and panfish. This area, we also hold lots of our naturalist and interpretive programming. Welcome to the end of Pike Island, which is the confluence of the Minnesota River and the Mississippi River. This area is also known as Badote, which is the joining of two rivers. This area is called the center of the universe, or the birthplace of the creation story for the Dakota people. The Dakota people were here long before European settlers. So coming out here, it gives you a sense of serenity and a chance to just really enjoy the peacefulness. What I love about Fort Snelling is people from outstate and in-state love to come and explore Fort Snelling because of the urban location, but also just that it's a quiet park in the middle of a busy and active metropolitan area.
We want to commemorate, we want to celebrate, we want to confront that history and think about what happened here and how it affects our lives today.
Still ahead, we try and warm you up as Ron Schara waxes all about the sun. But first, anglers protect the habitat where their favorite fish hide.
Closed captioning provided by Star Bank.
This time of year, many anglers have Lake Superior steelhead on the brain. It is a migrating rainbow trout that moves from the lake into the tributaries. And the same people who covet those fish work to clean and protect the places they live. Fishing breeds passion. Passion leads to motivation. On this morning, incentive comes from a hot dose of caffeine.
First of all, thanks for coming out. My name is Davin Brandt. I'm the president of Minnesota Steelheader. We found everything. People's trash bags.
Davin Brandt gears up for a small crowd of niche Northwoods anglers.
We've got some safety vests. Everyone's got to have one of these safety vests on up at the highway.
Catchers who become pickers.
All kinds of stuff. Glass bottles, coffee cups.
It's usually stuff that ends up either blown onto the back of trucks or people maybe blatantly just throw it out in the highway. So
volunteers walk the highway and the woods along Lake Superior's Sucker River, a watery haunt home to some of Minnesota's best fishing. Which is kind of why these people showed up. See, most belong to Minnesota Steelheaders.
We're very ill.
A small conservation group.
Never had it, never will.
Focused on steelhead trout and the water where those fish live.
you join because you want to help. You know, you want to be able to give back. So this was a great avenue for anglers to be able to come and volunteer and to be able to spend a little bit of time to help.
Sam Hendrickson crawled out of bed early, a 12-year-old who gets it.
Just pick up your trash and don't just say, oh, drop something on the ground, and just respect the property, because this property is pretty much letting you fish here.
All of this stuff belongs in a landfill, not our wild spaces. End of story. Okay, not really. Volunteers also work alongside biologists on fish research.
So what we've got here is a steelhead rainbow trout. This particular fish was actually tagged at the Knife River. Now this one is kind of a unique fish because it already has another tag in it. Ontario tagged this fish last year in a river up near Thunder Bay. So this one moved quite a ways.
Non-native steelhead first showed up in Lake Superior in the late 1800s. Those fish transported and introduced from rivers along the Pacific coast. The population always seems to fluctuate. Even now, anglers cannot legally keep steelhead. No matter.
What we have here is a really nice, it appears to be a male steelhead.
They still covet each catch, and more importantly, each release.
I mean, these things are just amazing fish.
I think it's one of the best fighting fish we have in the state.
And a fish worth fighting for, even one piece of trash at a time.
It's good to get it out.
It's important to make sure that we leave any place that we go better than we found it.
Minnesota Bound is brought to you by Midwest Exteriors MN, the 2023 Minnesota Bound Crappie Contest, and by Totem Resorts, the premier destination for world-class fishing.
Up next, Ron Schara gets us ready for summer with a bit of fun about the sun.
We Minnesotans tend to have a love-hate relationship with the sun. In winter, we seek beaches to worship the sun. In summer, we hide in its shade. When it's dark and overcast for days, we miss those rays. Yet at sunset, we pause to watch them go away. A few Minnesotans relish a new day, the sun morning rise in the sky. As someone once said, every sunrise is a poem written on the earth. Yet other folks at the dawn of a day prefer to have their eyes closed on a pillow. Nature's critters, too, are touched by the sun in more ways than one. It's been noted, for example, you can't sneak a sunrise past a rooster. The sun might be 93 million miles away, but its impact on all plant and animal life is, well, shall we say, it makes babies. Yes, as the Earth tilts toward the sun and the days grow longer, the urge to mate and reproduce intensifies. Wild tom turkeys gobble and strut to attract hens for mating. She also gets in the mood instinctively knowing her eggs need to be fertilized. Migrating sandhill cranes may have thousands of miles to fly, but springtime leads to courtship dances along the way. And who hasn't heard love songs from our feathered friends ringing from the treetops as the days grow longer? Plants may not sing, but plants sense increasing daylight, which triggers flowers to grow and to bloom. The impact of increasing daylight is different for a buck deer. A buck's antlers, his sex appeal, simply come loose and fall to the ground. Interestingly, a buck deer's sex life, known as the rut, is inspired not by longer days, but by decreasing daylight. As the days grow shorter in October and November, a buck's neck swells and his urge to find a receptive doe keeps him on the move. And yes, he has a new set of antlers to show off his buckhood. In truth, the sun guides the life of every plant or animal from tiny flowers to giant moose. Drake mallards are adorned in colorful spring plumage. Black bears get shiny new spring coats. And let's not forget how we learned to use a light bulb to fool chickens. Yes, many a farmer has turned on the lights in the hen house to fool chickens into laying eggs ahead of springtime. So, it's no wonder the center of our universe is a star we call the sun. Now you know it does more than make sunburns. Keep in mind, nothing lasts forever. Scientists predict the sun is gonna burn out, go dark, in about 5 billion years. That's nothing for a rooster to crow about.
Summer is right around the corner.
I just cannot wait.
Me too. Well, that about does it for us. We'll see you back here next week.
In the meantime, don't forget to introduce a kid to the great outdoors.
Transportation provided by Premier Transportation. Call 1-800-899-7433.